The second building block of culture that we're going to think about today is that of time orientation, called chronemics. And this is very important. This answers the question, how do I view time? How do I organize my daily activities? And we have very extreme differences here. On one end of the continuum, we have monochronism, mono meaning one, versus on the other end, polychronism, meaning more than one. So monochronism versus polychronism. In the United States, we have a tendency to be extremely monochronic, and I know many of you will be able to relate to this. In a monochronic society, time is limited. In fact, we live by our schedules. We live by our deadlines. They are sacred. And for that reason, we do not make changes to our schedules very easily. In fact, people may be too busy to see you, and we understand that. The needs of people are actually subservient to the demands of time. And so whenever people do get your undivided attention, they expect it. They want you to focus on them and them alone. Interruptions are to be avoided in this very highly scheduled way of thinking. And to be late, to be kept waiting is rude. And in our culture, people actually do stand in line. The goal is to stick to the schedule. Now, there are many phrases that we have in U.S. American culture that reflect the importance of time. We might say things like, daylight's a burning. We're burning time. Time is money. And we have a tendency to be extremely monochronic, very focused on time, and we feel pressured by time. We might feel like we're always rushed and that we don't have enough time. Well, in many other parts of the world, people have a very different view of time. In fact, in most of the world, people think that time can be bent to meet the needs of people. And there's always more time. In fact, my friends in Senegal, West Africa say to me, Sherry, c'est l'Afrique, on a le temps. This is Africa, there's always time. And that's true. In these cultures, schedules and deadlines are easily changed because plans are fluid. People will always have time to see you. And for that reason, people can be multitaskers. They're going to do several things at once, and they're going to split their time between you and maybe several other people and several other tasks. After all, interruptions are a normal part of life. And the goal is not to manage the time, but simply to enjoy the time that you have. So in many of these cultures, people do not stand in line at all. In fact, if you're going to go to the post office in Algeria, you might be perplexed when you walk in the door and you see everybody kind of crowding around the window, and you're thinking, well, where's the line? Well, there isn't one. You ask yourself, well, how do I make sense of that? Well, you just kind of have to wiggle your way in and see what the flow is and just kind of keep on insisting until you get up to the front. And just know that when you get to the front of the window, the person behind the window is going to be talking to you and maybe two or other three people simultaneously. And that doesn't feel very good if you come from a very monochronic culture. Now, in polychronic cultures, it's very acceptable to be late or to be kept waiting. In fact, if you're from Mexico, if that's your home culture, you know that if someone says to you, come by my house at 6 o'clock, what that really means is come by my house maybe by 7:30 or even 8 o'clock. And so if your home culture is polychronic and you're living in this very monochronic world, sometimes you really get confused because you're not sure what rules that you're actually having to live by. So polychronics, they are multitaskers because time is fluid. It can be bent. It's always there to meet the needs of people, whereas monochronics use time to schedule people. And it's a very different way of looking at the world. So I often say to business clients who are thinking about doing business in Latin America, once you cross the border and you get off the plane, don't watch the watch. In fact, take off your watch. Relax. Know that business is both social and personal, and that it takes time to develop relationships. And this is the #1 complaint that business people have across the globe, with the exception of maybe Northern Europeans and Australians, about U.S. American business practices. And that is that we here in the United States always seem to be so time conscious, and we're always thinking about getting the deal done. Whereas in many parts of the globe, it's not about getting the deal done. It's about getting to know people first and then getting to do the business. So now let's look. Again, look at the United States. We're all the way over to the left. We are probably the most extreme monochronics on the planet. Then we move to the right and we see Japan, followed by China. Again, the Middle East, Latin America, most of Asia tends to run very polychronic. In fact, Mexico is probably one of the most polychronic countries that we have. And so again, very stark differences between this way of thinking about time and organizing our time. So now let's take another quick quiz. List one characteristic of monochronism that you've just learned. List one characteristic of polychronism. And remember, it's polychronism and monochronism. A lot of times students misspell those words. So monochronism, polychronism. We can say, I am a polychronic, or Maria is a monochronic. So now the question is, are you more monochronic or polychronic in your personal time orientation? Remember, there's no right or wrong here. It's just a matter of degree and difference. I want to give you a little case study here. I work a lot with people who are wanting to do business in Mexico. And actually, this case study comes to us from our speech communication textbook entitled Understanding Human Communication. So if you are in a campus-based Speech 1311 class, you're going to have this in your textbook on page 186. And in this scenario, you have Miguel from Mexico and Michael from Dallas, and they want to do business together. But the problem is that they don't understand their cultural differences, especially as it relates to time. Okay? So Mike is saying to himself, now, why aren't we getting on with this meeting? It's 11:45. I've been here with Miguel for 45 minutes already, and I've not even begun to talk business with him. I know that both me and this proposal are new to Miguel, but how can I count on this guy when all he does is ask me questions about myself, my background, my interests, my family, and my philosophy? Why does he have to be so nosy? I don't know him well enough to get into that personal stuff. I know he's just invited me to have lunch with him, but it's a 30-minute drive to the 1 o'clock appointment I've scheduled, and I have to be on time. All I wanted to do was run through this proposal quickly the first time to see if he had any interest, and if he did, come back again to see about doing business. Sometimes I think all these Hispanics want to do is talk about anything but business. And he says, oh well, I've never had any luck doing business with Hispanics before, so why should it be different this time? And he says, well, thanks for the invitation to have lunch with Miguel, but I've got to get along to my next appointment. Here's my card. Maybe we can do business next time. So now what is Miguel thinking? Here's what he's saying to himself. Now, why aren't we getting on with this? It's 11:45, and I've been here with Mike for 45 minutes already, and I haven't even begun to talk business. How can I know if I want to do business with him unless I know something about him and the kind of man he is? But I feel like a dentist pulling teeth, and he doesn't want to know anything about me. He doesn't want to know where I come from. We don't like to do business with strangers, after all. We like to know something about the other person, and we can feel that we can at least begin to trust them before we start to talk business seriously. You know, it's too bad he turned me down for lunch. I think I can trust him, and I'm really interested in his product line. Maybe with a little more time, I think we could do business. But I've got to feel at least a little sure about who I'm doing business with. Sometimes I think that all these Anglos want to do is talk about business in their next meeting. Oh well, I guess I've never had any luck doing business with gringos before, so why should it be different this time? And so he says to Mike, oh, that's all right, Mike. We'll have lunch another time. Come back again. I'd like to get to know you better. Maybe we can do business next time. Now, folks, unfortunately, this is the scenario that repeats itself in different ways all across the globe. And the failure to understand this one cultural building block of chronemics, how people approach time, it causes U.S. businesses to lose literally hundreds of millions of dollars each and every year. So this is an excellent case study of understanding what happens when two very different time orientations clash.